What's the timescale from today, 2008, up to, you say, we are now X amount of years in the future, equivalent to, say, the UK, France, Germany?
You know, as we mentioned earlier on, the key to this whole thing is education. Education is going to be 3 generations away. Because first you've got to fix the poverty in the townships, so the children can take advantage of their environment in order to have propensity for education. Then you've got to get that generation through their training, and then you've got to get them through their value system transfer from tribal traditional to Western, and only then do I think that you're going to find that the country could become a monolithic democracy. I think the chances of it happening under something like, what is 3 generations, 50, 70 years?
That long?
That long, and then everything still has to work smoothly. There mustn't be any tensions in the ANC, you mustn't have a fragmentation of political power, because all those things impact on stability, and stability impacts on education.
Now, there are huge demographic shifts going on, certainly in the last 10 years, and accelerating in recent years, from the displacement of people in Zimbabwe in particular. How much of an effect has that been on the South African government?
Well, it's had a huge impact. It's actually grown the group of people who are poverty-stricken in South Africa. We know at the moment that, with fairly reliable figures, that about 3 million Zimbabweans have moved into South Africa. Add to that the probably 1 or 2 million from Mozambique. Add to that people from even further north, Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola. These people have all filtered down into South Africa. So we're looking at the possibility that you've added 5 million people to the economy who are going to undertake the kind of work which your illiterate South African would normally undertake. Farm worker, labourer in the factory, working in services of municipality and so on. Now those people are being absorbed into the economy. They prepare to work for lower wages, and they displace the South African poverty-stricken people, and they prevent them getting access to the economy. So yes, I think there's a significant influence on the welfare of the South African population.
That seemed to echo what's going on in Western Europe, certainly in the UK. Large numbers of immigrants coming in. Employers take full advantage of the potential for low wages. Where, in the case of South Africa, do you think that's going to lead, with the indigenous population being displaced by the cheap labourer? Where will that ultimately lead to?
You know, that's a very difficult question to answer, because the stability of Southern Africa has a huge influence on whether these people migrate back to their homeland or not. So we're watching with bated breath to see what happens in Zimbabwe on the 29th of March when the presidential elections come up. Is there going to be a return? And most Zimbabweans tell you they want to return to Zimbabwe, but not under present circumstances. The Mozambicans would like to go back to Mozambique, the DRC people and so on. But a lot of it hinges on developments around us, and I don't think we can be too optimistic about that. I think that the surrounding states which have trouble at the moment, that excludes Namibia and Botswana at the moment, they're going to take quite a few decades to get back to where they are able to reabsorb their own population. Now, how do you fix that in South Africa? What do you actually do to absorb those people and your own poverty-stricken people? And that's the big question. You know, one thinks, for instance, of the Hoover Dam project in the 1930s in America, where the government had to finance huge amounts of economic activity, which is geared to the skills of the people that you have. I think that, for instance, our new president, whoever it is going to have to use a different tack to what we have at the moment by trying to absorb our population into the Western model, which is mining, manufacturing, high-tech agriculture. We're going to have to find another playing field for the illiterate black South Africans. Here you've got infrastructure development, where you can build railway lines, you can build roads, you can build dams, you can create high labour-intense projects where you can absorb the population that needs money, and at the same time you take advantage of that and you train them to become electricians, plumbers, carpenters, bricklayers, etc. So when the project is finished, they are equipped with sufficient skill to go into the free economy. That, I think, is the direction it's going to have to go. The big question is, where will we get finance? The answer is you've got to get foreign investment, you've got to get the EU, you've got to get America, you've got to get Britain involved in financing these things, which are not going to pay a dividend for many years. And that again depends on the perception of the president and the government. Is he becoming a black dictator? Is he going to curtail the freedom of the press? Because if he does that, he's going to frighten off investment from overseas. I think that the answer lies in huge investment in labour-intensive projects financed by the government.
On the international stage, South Africa is seen as the bulwark of Africa and a stabilising effect on the whole continent. The African Union and its fledgling efforts to emulate the European Union, how successful do you think that's going to be, and what's the part that South Africa can play in that?
Well, I think the African Union itself is very fractured. The participating countries all have different agendas, they have different alliances, they have their own special problems. So I don't think that the African Union will ever become a unified force in the sense that it can act as the United Nations of Africa. It's trying to do it, it's trying to grow up, but I'm afraid that the fracturing of the AU due to the diverse differences in African countries doesn't suggest the possibility that it will become a driving force. South Africa is going to participate in Southern Africa. I think we're going to find the next 10 years, unlike Thabo Mbeki's philosophy of becoming involved even far north of us, that the new president will start to retract and come back onto South African soil to solve South African problems. It'll be the exception rather than the rule if we became involved in peacekeeping or problem solving in other countries, unless they're directly on our border. If they're directly on our border, then I think we probably will get involved. But I see a declining role for South Africa in Africa, but still an engine room for the wealth and health of Southern Africa.
So you see a retraction potentially of South African power and possibility of a vacuum opening up in Africa in terms of the African Union?
Yes.
Who do you think is going to fill that? Is it going to be an external force like China that's growing power, or America, or European Union?
China, I think, will become a very strong economic power. Their policy of non-participation in political differences serves their agenda because they don't mind dealing with dictators. So I don't think they'll get involved politically, but I do think they'll get involved economically. They're already doing so. If you go into our clothing stores in South Africa, you'll find 2 out of 3 articles are made in China. It's simply being driven economically. Possibility that China will come in very strongly economically. But if we look at the political scenario, the only hope is going to be a refocusing of attention by the EU and the United Nations, if they have the patience to deal with Africa. But that's where I think the hope may lie.
You think that there is talk of a Mediterranean Union by President Sarkozy of France, which is outside of the European Union. The German Chancellor Merkel initially was against it, whereas now seem to see benefits in that. Is this something that Africa can feel more a part of now, because quite a few countries in North Africa are already earmarked for membership of this group?
Africa's got an interesting colonial history, and you know that the sounds of colonialism still echo in the corridors of power in Africa. West Africa is Francophile. East Africa is predominantly British, Italian and German. Southern Africa, let's say, was predominantly influenced by being members of the Commonwealth. I think the alliances are going to go back more to the mother countries of the colonial powers than into an umbrella organization which will have a fairly heterogeneous kind of a character to it. Africa is very, very strongly bonded to the concept of identifiable culture. And we have such a heterogeneous cultural map of Africa that my feeling is that it's going to go back to the old colonial powers. Find France becoming more involved in West Africa, as they are in Ivory Coast and Chad and places like that. And perhaps the British Commonwealth will be able to play a bigger role in Botswana, Swaziland, Lesotho, Namibia and South Africa, and Kenya, perhaps Malawi and places like this. The Portuguese government, I'm not sure whether they are ready to come back into Africa, but if they did, they would have a strong influence in Mozambique and Angola. The population's vernacular, in fact, is Portuguese. They communicate in Portuguese, they drink red wine, they love the Portuguese culture. So I think that's the direction it's going to go in.
Just to round up this very interesting interview, the future of South Africa and the white population, where do you see its place in this fantastic country?
The buffer to excess by politicians in South Africa is in fact the white population, combined with a thin layer of black and the Indian and the coloured population. They add a dimension to South Africa which is missing in most of the African countries where the colonial powers just left. They left a vacuum. And that is in fact the lifeline which I think could save South Africa from the disasters of Zimbabwe. Because there's no doubt about it that whoever's in government in South Africa will have to recognize that the economic engine is predominantly driven by, for historical reasons, by the white population. Without the economic engine, you can't do anything in South Africa. So you have to do a tightrope walk, an egg dance between what you want to do for your population, your power base, and the productive capacity of the whites. So that, in a sense, is a lifeline for South Africa. Will the white population leave? I think all those who were going to leave have left. For two reasons, a lot of whites can't leave South Africa: the rand value. The white population is an aging population, so that is a constraint as well. And the fact that if you want to get on in the Western world or anywhere else where the whites are predominant, you have to be young. And so I think most of those who've left have left, who are going to leave.
Ron Miller, thank you very much indeed.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank
you,
you.
Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good luck to you.
Thank you.
So.